Serious. People who stumbled on a dead body. What's your story? I've told this story before. But why not tell it again? Also, long read ahead. For some context. My parents' house is in the middle of nowhere. Dead center in a gigantic abandoned pine tree farm. The only other resident within a 3-mile radius is a hermit who lives in a makeshift cabin about half a mile away. He's been there for as long as I've been alive. And the only contact I ever had with him was him threatening to shoot my dog if she escaped and came on his property again. The property wasn't even his. Anyway. A few months ago I was pulling up to my parents' house to watch their dog while they were on vacation. And when I got out of my car a horrible smell on the breeze hit me in the face. Since it's the middle of nowhere, hunters dumping deer carcasses is pretty common. But this smelled so much worse. I was curious, so I started walking into the woods in the direction the breeze was blowing. It kept getting worse and worse as I got closer to his cabin. When I got to it, I saw all of the chickens in the coop were dead. I figured that was the smell. Shrugged and started to walk back. Then I realized the only reason they would be dead would be because something happened to the hermit. I walked up to the cabin and knocked on the door, which was essentially just a large piece of plywood, and got no answer. I could see through the crack between the door frame and plywood and I just saw a giant black cloud of flies. At that point I should have probably just called the police. But I wanted to confirm it wasn't just an animal that wandered in and croaked, since the door was just a plank of wood with a latch. I opened it up and saw the hermit laying face down in the hallway covered in flies and maggots. At that point he was basically just a mushy pile of human and loose skin hanging from bones. The smell was awful. The only reason I didn't puke is because I was somewhat used to the smell of rotting human remains from where I work, so I trekked to the nearest dirt road and called the cops. And they arrived after about 3 hours. According to them they had no record of him living there, or even what his name was. He had been dead for approximately 1 to 2 months and nobody knew about it since nobody even knew he existed except for me and my family. When I was a child my family went on holidays in Tunisia. On our Sat day we went for one final swim in the pool. I remember remarking to my older sister how great the young boy at the bottom of the pool was at holding his breath. She took no notice of me and we continued playing. The pool was packed full of people playing actually. Suddenly a mother comes screaming out of the hotel and straight into the pool. Pulled him out of the water like a sack of rocks. Half hour of CPR but no luck. It was suspected that in the early morning a group of older youths thought it was funny to get him really drunk. Then they pushed him into the pool and walked away laughing. Turns out the boy couldn't swim and drowned. Still have no idea how he went unnoticed at the bottom of the pool for hours. I was walking my girlfriend to one of her favorite restaurants for her birthday. We walked through a big memorial park in my city on the way and we passed a man slumped over in a very uncomfortable looking way against a big limestone structure. I asked if he was alright and he didn't respond. I got down on my haunches to look at his face. He was slumped over with his hood up, contorted and face pointing at the ground. His eyes were open slightly and he was clearly dead. We called 911 and waited till the paramedics arrived. They told us he had likely been dead for hours. Suspected overdose. Super sad. I think about that a lot recently as the number of homeless people or people suffering from addiction in my city has risen significantly since March. I was the house manager at my university's student union and that involved doing a sweep of the building at closing time. Normal night. Finding everything empty and in good order until I get to the dining area's restroom. I see a guy's feet under the door in one of the stalls and knock and tell him it's time to go. He doesn't respond, so I'd give him a few more minutes and will check again on my way back. Sure enough, he's still there. This time I sensed it wasn't right and went and got a custodian. Turns out that the poor guy was having a heart attack and thought he had to go to the bathroom. He passed right there in that toilet stall. I've seen a few dead bodies and witnessed a few deaths, but truly discovered two. First one was when I was about 11. My dad, my friend, our Labrador retriever and I were duck hunting and camping out for the weekend near a large bay of water. We were walking on the beach the second night when we stumbled upon a male's body, fully clad in a winter coat, pants, and one Reebok pump shoe. It was obvious he had been dead for some time, so it was hard to tell exactly how old. After we trekked and boated back to the mainland, we called the police from a tiny gas station and they came out and had us take them out to where he was discovered. Turns out he had been missing for over 2 weeks. Which explains why his eyes were pretty much gone and his skin looked melted. They were later able to determine his identity and that he had disappeared while on a walk with his wife one night, about 10 miles from where he was discovered. Foul play was suspected by many, but as far as I know, no arrests were ever made. I arrived at work early one morning and went into the men's locker room. Lying dead on the floor was a man I didn't recognize at first because his head was so swollen from where it hit the ceramic tile floor, in a pool of blood as well. Apparently, though only in his 40s. He had suffered a massive heart attack and collapsed to the floor after just having taken a shower in the adjoining shower room. Looking at him more, I realized who it was. A long-time employee who was very well liked and admired. When the realization set in, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was 13, doing my paper round before school. Cut through an alleyway and heard a car engine. I looked round expecting to see a car pulling out into the alleyway, but it was just sitting there with the engine idling with the guy at the wheel looking asleep. My legs sort of just kept going for a few seconds until I realized what the hose pipe going from the back of the car and through the window meant. When I was a kid, 5 or 6 maybe, a sort of friend of mine vanished. Just went away. He was gone for about a week or so. It was summer and we lived near a kind of rundown secluded beach. Only folk in our neighborhood used, so one day a week or so after this kid is gone, my mom and I walk down to the beach. I follow a crab running on the beach and around this little hill I come across the kid's body. No cell phones in those days, so my mom grabbed me up. We ran home and she called 911. Cops came, it was a whole thing. I really don't remember much except thinking he looked green. It was probably seaweed or something, but in my memory he was all that color. They never did find the guy who killed him. There was a local guy they suspected, but it was never proven. It was 9 years ago. I was just 16 when my father's depression and social anxiety got worse. He was an alcoholic and him and my mother just talked about divorce. He then tried to take his life twice. One time my mother stopped him. The other time I did. He was in the hospital afterwards and I told him we would figure everything out and that I would always support him. He agreed and he was on medication afterwards, so everything seemed to be going better. Then one day I was at home searching for something and I thought it was in our attic. So I went upstairs to search for it. I was wondering why the attic door was open but didn't think too much of it. Went in and saw my father coming down the stairs. Even talked to him. As he didn't respond, I finally saw the sling around his neck and his feet dangling in the air. Ran to my mother in shock, unable to explain what I had seen. Police came shortly afterwards saying he'd been dead since the night and was drunk when he decided to end his life. His face still haunts me to this day. Even though it got better through therapy and the help of friends and family. Was working as part of forensics recovery team many years back, and we were sent to an area that an individual was suspected of dumping a couple bodies. But previous searches by the sheriff's deputy turned up empty. Our team gets there and being searching in the ravine. Think trees and heavy underbrush. And we don't see any skeletal remains lying about it. It had been over a year since they were dumped. That is when I noticed the numerous woodrat nests under some of the trees and brush. Like lots of woodrat nests. So, here is where it is important to know something about rodents. They love to chew on bones. And woodrats are hoarders. You see where this is going. So I told the lead detective my hunch. And we proceeded to dismantle 2 of the woodrat nests. Lo and behold, we found human remains interspersed in the mound of twigs. Needless to say, we then tore down all of the dozen or so piles, and found many of the missing bones from the 2 individuals, all heavily gnawed on by rodents. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit After Dark. Have a good night.